So this anger management counselor is about to get mad and shoot a pastor. Now, the counselor's name is Latoshia, and Latoshia is about 37 when all this starts, and she's living in Little Rock, Arkansas. And Latoshia, she's a social worker and an anger management counselor. But Latoshia has a problem. Her marriage is in a really bad place. Things just don't seem to be working out. And one day in 2017, she decides to get some counseling from this pastor that she had met through her church. Now, the pastor, his name is Brows. So she meets with Pastor Browses for their first session, and I guess Latoshia must be feeling a connection because she starts telling him everything about how she's feeling a lack of love in the relationship with her husband, and how she doesn't feel emotionally fulfilled and whatnot. And I guess Pastor Browses is saying all the right things back, and it goes so well that Latoshia decides to meet with him for a second session. Here's the thing about this second session. Though, at this session, Pastor Braz starts looking at Latoshia like she kind of fine, and I guess as she's telling him more and more about her failing marriage, he feels like this is his moment to make a move, and he and Latoshia start making out, and one thing leads to another, and pretty soon they are a smashing. And this is great for Latoshia. I mean, suddenly she's getting everything that's been missing in her marriage. So from here, she and Pastor Braz decide to start a relationship. Here's the problem with them starting a relationship though. Not only is she still married, but Pastor Browses is also married, so they gotta keep all this side smashing a secret. Now, during this secret affair, Latoshia actually starts going through the process of getting a divorce. Pastor Browse does not. He keeps his marriage going, and he also lays down a list of very strict rules for their secret affair. He tells her she has to download this specific messaging app where their messages immediately disappear after being seen. He tells her that she has to pay her own way when she goes on trips with him. That way his bank statements don't tip off his wife. Not only that, but he seems to be a somewhat controlling guy. Like when they stay in hotel rooms, he orders her to always be naked, and he'll legitimately get angry at her if she forgets, or if she gets cold and puts clothes on. And at some point, he starts demanding that she always call him sir and answer things with yes sir or no sir. And of course, all of these are huge red flags to you and me. But Latoshia, she's not trying to see that. She's in love with this dude. In fact, she likes him so much that she even starts buying him fancy gifts like nice bourbons, or expensive cigars, or workout clothes, or really anything he wants. She is in deep. So as this affair progresses, they're going on all these trips together, like Las Vegas and Israel and Savannah. But what they're not doing is they're not being honest with each other. At least he's not being honest with her because he's always trying to talk to her about ethical non-monogamy or something. And he tells her that his wife knows about their affair. She definitely doesn't know, and that she's totally fine with him hooking up with Latoshia on the side. She's definitely not fine with him hooking up with Latoshia on the side. Now, his wife is this woman, Tabitha, and Tabitha, she doesn't know about any of this, and she certainly didn't agree to any ethical non-monogamy or whatever, but we'll get back to Tabitha. Now, at some point in 2018, this whole secret love affair gets even worse for Latoshia because Pastor Bro gets offered a job as a pastor at a different church a few states away over in Tennessee. And he has decided to accept this job, and now he's no longer gonna live there and be near Latoshia. So he and his wife Tabitha move from Little Rock over to Tennessee and they settle there. But Latoshia, she is not ready to let this relationship go. So she and Pastor Braz do the long distance thing, and this works for a while. But then in 2019, Pastor Braz suddenly changes. He starts acting emotionally distant from her. And one night they decide to meet up, and they end up meeting at this hotel. And on this night, he's acting very different. Like he's all mean to her now, and he's like rough with her and just not romantic at all. And Latoshia, she's feeling all kinds of ways about it. Like the things with him are never gonna be the way she wants. So she goes and she gets a gun from somewhere. We don't know where. And she goes back to the hotel room to unalive herself in front of him because she wants him to feel as bad as she's feeling. And luckily, Pastor Braz is able to talk her out of it and take her gun away from her. Now, at this point, I'm sure Pastor Braz is feeling like Latoshia, and this whole long distance affair has just become a lot to handle and potentially a liability for him. So not long after that, he decides to break up with her, and he does it by sending her a disappearing text, which is just cold. And of course, Latoshia is absolutely destroyed by this. Like, how could he do this to her after all they've been through? So she goes and she buys herself another gun because she plans on unaliving herself. Then she starts driving to a local park because that's where she's gonna do it. And along the way, she decides, nah, she wants wants to talk to Pastor Browses one last time before she unalives herself, I guess, to get closure. So she drives from Little Rock, Arkansas, all the way over to Tennessee, and there she just like shows up at this cigar lounge that she knows that he goes to a lot. And of course he is there, and they start talking. Now, we don't know for sure what they talked about there, but allegedly the pastor tells her to drive over to his apartment and he'll meet her there, and that together they can confront his wife Tabitha and talk to her about their relationship. So she heads over to his place, and when she gets there, Tabitha lets her in. They apparently know each other from church, and Latosha lies to her and she says that she's in town for a conference or something, and the two of them start catching up for a bit. Then Pastor Brodes comes home, and immediately he acts like he doesn't know why Latosha is even there. He's like, "Oh, what brings you to town? Where are you staying?" Stuff like that. And this is not how Latosha thought this conversation would go, and she is convinced that they need to be talking to his wife about how she and him are seeing each other on the side. So as this conversation goes on, she's getting more and more angry and more humiliated, and eventually she's just like, "Okay, I'm just going to go then." And she asks Pastor Brodes to walk her out, but he refuses to do it, and for some reason he volunteers his wife Tabitha to do it. And this is when Latosha finally just snaps. She has had enough of this guy's nonsense. So she takes that gun out of her jacket and she points it at Pastor Browses and she screams, "You broke my heart." And then blam, 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 blam. She shoots him at least 5 times. Then she points the gun at Tabitha and bam, she shoots her in the shoulder. Now, unfortunately, Pastor Brodes doesn't survive, but luckily, Tabitha does. And after all that, Latosha strangely doesn't flee the scene. She stays there in their house and contemplates unaliving herself. Well, eventually police show up, and so bam, they arrest her. Here's her mugshot, and ultimately Latosha goes to trial and she's found guilty. And she actually hasn't been sentenced yet, but I assume she'll probably spend the rest of her life in prison.